As most countries' economy grows, so do the activities along their coastal lines. For example, the vast majority of household goods and personal effects are transported by modern containerized vessels. Some strong economies such as Japan, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Kitts and Nevis depend highly on the exploitation of marine resources. However, who governs these practices? What are the limits, if any, to control these practices? This is a presentation on the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea and some of its measures put in place for equitable use of marine resources. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea is the most comprehensive attempt at creating a unified regime for governance of the rights of nations with respect to the world's oceans. The treaty, one of the longest in history, is comprised of 320 articles and 9 annexes representing the codification of customary international law and its progressive development. The treaty was heavily influenced by the new International Economic Order. This is a set of economic principles first formally advanced at the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. The treaty addresses a number of topics including setting limits, economic rights, exclusive economic zones, deep-bed mining, exploitation regimes, and settling disputes. Setting limits. The dispute over who controls the oceans probably dates back to the days when the Egyptians first plied the Mediterranean in papyrus rafts, before the Convention on the Law of the Sea could address any issues. One major and primary issue, the setting of limits, would depend on clearly defining the line separating national and international waters. These limits were categorized into 4 main groups. They are as follows. Archipelagic waters. This applies to states that are in a close proximity to each other, such as the archipelago of the Caribbean. These islands' territorial sea is a 12-mile zone which extends from the baseline to the outermost points of the outermost islands of the group that are in close proximity. The states have full sovereignty over these waters, but foreign vessels have rights of innocent passage through these waters. Contiguous zone. The conference progressed. The move towards a 12-mile territorial sea gained wider and eventually universal acceptance. Within this limit, states are in a principle free to enforce any law, regulate any use, and exploit any resource. Exclusive economic zone. This is an extension from the territorial sea to 200 nautical miles. The coastal nation has sole exploitation rights over all natural resources. The EEZ were introduced to stop the increasingly heated clashes over fishing rights, although oil was also becoming important. The main purpose of this limit is to protect the longevity of fishing grounds of coastal waters. This is because phytoplankton is the foundation of the oceanic food chain. The richest phytoplankton pastures lie within 200 miles of the continental masses. Continental shelf. This is the margin which is between the shoreline and the shelf break or slope between the shoreline. As technology increases and economic oceanic activities increases, so does the importance of a country's continental shelf. This is where a rich bounty of resources is found. Settlement of disputes. An example of this can be the case of Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago maritime delimitation of December 2006. On 2004, Barbados initiated arbitration proceedings concerning its maritime boundary with the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. That is the delimitation of a single maritime boundary between the EEZ and the continental shelves appertaining to Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago respectively, whereby the tribunal found that the equidistant line in the west shall be the delimitation line between Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago. As for the central segment, extends from point B of Barbados' claim to point A of Trinidad and Tobago's claim, the tribunal concluded that the equidistant line was agreed to in this segment. Lastly, the parties did not agree to request delimitation at the eastern area by means of a single maritime boundary. So the tribunal stated that it would firstly determine a single boundary line for the delimitation of both the continental shelf and the EEZ to the extent of the overlapping claims, without prejudice to the question of the separate legal existence of the EEZ and the continental shelf. To conclude, the following are challenges faced by the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea. The goal of the organization is to help states to better understand and implement the convention in order to utilize their marine resources in an environment relatively free of conflict and conducive to development, safeguarding the rule of law in the oceans.